Yeah. All righty. Mike McCarthy, reporting to the CEO. Mike leads, plans, and directs all facets of HR for 5 U.S. IFM companies. IFM Canada, IFM Mexico. Mike and his team work towards sustaining and strengthening companies' employee-oriented high-performance culture to ensure high retention, engagement, productivity, improvement, and the development of superior workforce. Mike's got a lot of experience in senior human resources positions for multi-site business groups in industrial automation, pharmaceutical, and electric vehicle industries. Fascinating. Mike holds a degree in industrial relations and human resources from the University of Minnesota and a bachelor's in political science from Penn State. Does that mean Mike didn't know what he wanted to do when he grew up until he grew up? I'm not sure. Sounds like me. Mike Harris is a senior benefits consultant at Munich RE America. He understands the administration of employee benefit plans, including health, dental, life, disability, and retirement programs. Because he's worked on both the consulting, the dark side of employee benefits, as well as in corporate benefit manager roles. Mike is great at recognizing opportunities within an organization and how to implement those programs across the enterprise. He has over 25 years experience in HR and benefits in the financial, insurance, and consulting industries. Excellent. Well, today our conversation here is about, it's kind of living or working with COVID. The idea, I know, anytime we see something with the word COVID in it, I think at this point we all kind of go, I've heard that already. I do not think you're going to have heard this because these are two in-seat human resources senior professionals who have lived through it and who are looking down the road. So we thought we would start with the story of how we got to today. What was our, what did they do so far? What was the impact on business? And, I'm just going to let it go, Mike and Mike. Mike McCarthy, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll do that.
One other thing, just if you can explain to us your company, just so people are more familiar with both organizations so they get that flavor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Morris. And I want to thank you and the team here to invite me to your meeting. It's an honor to do anything with Beacon and PSPS. Both are dear to my heart. I started with Beacon back when it was GP Seg, and I moved out of the area for a little while, and now I'm back, and been a long-term member of PSPS too. So know the organizations well. They have benefited my career, and it's great to be back, even though it's virtual right now. So everyone on the planet right now, Mars, to your point, has a story about COVID. They may have lost someone, they may have been working through it sick, or they have stayed shut in for almost a year now trying to avoid COVID. So I wanted to start that way because the company I want to talk to you about, my company, we have a story, and we're a very humble company. So I want that to come across. We revere, there's a lot of other people out there with a lot of other stories. So I'm here to tell you ours. IFM. What is IFM? IFM is a German acronym. For those of you that know German, I can spell that out for you. It's Ingenieurgemeinschaft für Technik. In an English translation, that would be Engineering Consortium for Metrology and Calibration. We go back to 1969. This whole company was really built around its culture. It is the glue of the entire company. That's going to be an important resonating theme throughout my part of this presentation. So who are we? What do we do? So we are a company that's involved with hardware, software, robotics, largely sensor type products all around the world. It's a global company, international headquarters in Germany. We are in 45 countries, brick and mortar. We've got products on all 7 plants. We're a little over $1 billion now, 8,000 employees. In the US, we have 5 different businesses: sales, marketing, manufacturing, product development, software, and e-commerce, and robotics. And we're about, right now, 200 million and a little over 300 employees. I've got responsibilities for North America, but I tailored this part of my talk really for the United States. So this time a year ago, we really got hit with the bombshells, we all know. And in our case, it really came at an untimely time. We were doing very, very well. It was mid-March, and a lot of our senior leadership were at trade shows, some in Atlanta, some in Las Vegas. I myself was supposed to be in Atlanta, and I decided to hold back with one other senior leader because we were starting to hear a lot more and more about COVID, the risks. At the time, it was don't touch anything or anything like that. So with people on planes and things like that, I held back. So while folks were out at the trade shows, it really hit the news hard, and we kind of had to scramble. We made a decision very quickly to keep our senior leaders at home when they got back. They quarantined for 2 weeks. We got a large part of our company out of the building at the headquarters. And at the same time, we were deemed an essential business by Governor Wolf here in Pennsylvania. Now, we have employees in 23 different states, and I can talk to you a little bit about that through the presentation. But a large part of what I'll concentrate here is the Pennsylvania locations. We have manufacturing product development here in Malvern, and we have distribution in Downingtown. And those two we needed up and running. They could not shut down. We serve over 3,000 food and beverage customers around the world. So we had to pivot in a lot of different areas, a lot of different locations, and with a lot of different people. And we also had a fear factor going at the same time. The CEO, myself, and our facilities manager were the primary tag team to lead the efforts and have been throughout COVID this last year. With the manufacturing facility, protection and safety had to come first. So back a year ago, really, we knew nothing about COVID, how it could be transmitted or whatnot. So we took emergency measures. We separated, we have 3 shifts, and we made sure none of those 3 shifts ever had contact with each other. So they went from 8-hour shifts to 6.5-hour shifts. We paid them for 8. We had masks on them immediately. We also had a mechanical engineer, spent a whole night designing our own face shield. There's one line that people have to get closer than 6 feet together, as we all know now, and it was recommended then. They wanted people to social distance 6 or more feet, but there is one line you have to get closer. So we have our homemade face shields because they were off the market at that point. We tried to do as much as we could pull from the market, but they just weren't available, like toilet paper. The other piece was the masks, and we had a lot of like sales engineers, whatnot. Their wives, their daughters were making sewing masks. We had home knit stuff, so it was really early, and we had those coming in. We were buying whatever we could off the market, masks from Rite Aid, CVS, what have you. And then the other piece was we wanted to really, really monitor if people would ever get closer than 6 feet, because we were really worried about the contagion of the virus and could it spread through a manufacturing facility or whatever. So we are in the sensor business, and we partnered with a firm that has technology that's almost like an Apple Watch, which can detect if you're near an object or a person. And we had some of our product managers parameterize that that watch, if you will, where it would buzz like if you have a meeting set on an Apple Watch. Those of you that wear it, or going to a restaurant and you get something when your table's ready, it buzzes. If you get closer than 6 feet in the plant, this will buzz. It'll also transmit the next day a report that only goes to HR and we can match numbers of people. They're all associated with an ID, who you were closer to, or who you were close to yesterday, closer than 6 feet, and for how long. If someone got COVID, anyone that was near them for longer than 10 minutes, they would have to be contacted and they would have to be sent home. So we can run a report. We have not had that problem yet in a year, knock on wood, for a lot of safety measures. All the precautions in the plant and the distribution center were really set up to, if someone came in with COVID, if 10 people came in with COVID, we could still withstand it. That was our philosophy with it. The watches are worn at the distribution center too. So that was using some of our own technology, our know-how, and putting it to use. Communications plan, we had a crisis communication plan that largely the facilities manager and myself put together. If an employee or a family member was tested positive, we wanted to make sure that we had a consistent, reliable place for testing. Because at the beginning of this, doctors were saying, well, it might just be a cold. And others were like, hey, you got to stay out of work for like a month. I mean, it was a huge range all over the board. Insurance companies were saying different things. So we wanted everyone to get the PCR nasal swab test. And we used PM Pediatrics in Springfield. Every employee and any family member that had any type of symptom, they had a virtual meeting, and then they went down for testing. And that way we knew it would be consistent, reliable, and that worked fantastic for 9 months. In the headquarters, we sent everyone home, including myself. I was gone 10 weeks. The only person that was here was the CEO. It was a requirement from our international headquarters that the managing directors and CEOs of different countries, they wanted one person in the building. And we followed Governor Wolf, red phase, yellow phase, and then green phase mid-June last year. Several of us on the leadership team came back. We have not gone to full capacity yet. This building in and of itself holds 110 people. We have never gone over 60, and we're not planning on it right now. Fortunately, naturally, we have some people that do want to continue to work at home or really have to. They have young children, daycare's closed, schools have been closed, as we all know, or they have an elderly person at home, or someone who's immunocompromised. So we have about 50 that have been really working at home for a year. We were doing digital sales and using other digitization tools even before COVID. We were using Skype for Business. We switched over to MS Teams, which is used throughout the entire day for sales calls, for internal calls, and we've been able to stay in touch with our entire team the whole time. And I have about 2 minutes left, so we can go into some depth on a couple things later here. But I wanted to tell you here in the headquarters, for those of you, a lot of that are working in offices, what we did here was last summer, we took out the whole HVAC ventilation system and we upgraded it to a medical grade. All doors are open at all times with the exception of the front door, which you need to badge in. A lot of these doors you had to badge through, they're open. Restroom doors on the second floor are, you use your arm to get in or a foot pedal. The ones on the first floor, the doors are completely open. If people feel safer going in there, you still have your privacy because we have completely enclosed stalls in the men's and women's rooms. The cafeteria with spacing, so no one is ever to be closer than 6 feet, including cubicles, offices, what have you. In the cafeteria where there would be more traffic, you go in masked. The seating has been reduced by half. We have very limited capacity in there, so people just have to eat when they can. You can take your mask off once you sit down, kind of like a restaurant. When you get up, there is a bottle of alcohol and a paper towel to clean your area. You clean it, then you go throw everything out, and you go your merry way. I have a coat and tie on today. In your honor, partially, and we always dressed out at the networking events face to face, but also I'm interviewing today on site 2 candidates, and that we just started 2 months ago. There's only one room we will interview in. There's only one room that we will meet with, and that's our largest conference room. In normal times, it seats 30 comfortably. We will only have 2 people in there at a time. We will sit across from each other, and we will wear masks during the whole time. Lastly, on the masks in our building, we were all issued 3 masks in about August. We did a ton of research on what are the most appropriate masks, and these are from Israel. They have, the nose clip, everything like that. They're made of very high quality. They're very expensive. Our company's built on 3 principles: employees first, safe growth, and customer loyalty. We've tried to honor all those things through COVID, and I think done a very good job in terms of where we are financially. But the employees first has really been the glue to get us through COVID. So I would tell you, just to hand it over to the other Mike, that this was really a testament to a culture that's been built over 50 years with the relationships and honoring employees. And fortunately, we haven't lost anyone. And we've been able to keep a working workforce. So with that, Mike, I want to give it to you.
Thanks, Mike. Great story. And I want to start off by, again, thanking our hosts today. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this and to share our organization's story as how we've, kind of not only adapted, but have gone through and for the most part survived fairly well. So I'll start at the beginning. Interestingly enough for me, I started at Munich Re, and Munich Re is a global reinsurance company headquartered in Germany. And the responsibility I have is with the benefits in the US. And in the US, there's about 4,200 employees, primarily in 3 locations: Hartford, Connecticut, Amelia, Ohio, and Princeton, New Jersey, which is the office I work out of, Princeton. However, we do have employees in all 50 states. Because of the type of business we are, we have a lot of folks that are on site at our client's place of business, so they work remotely. It's not a huge remote force. Most of our employees work in an office environment, but we do have, before this even started, groups of employees that were remote because of the business they're in. And Munich Re, as I said, is a reinsurer. It's made up of 7 entities here in the US, all with varying different focuses on business. I won't get into every one of them because that'll probably take up all my time. So needless to say, though, as a reinsurance company, from a global perspective, 2020 was a very difficult year because of the environment. Being reinsurance, we were unfortunately in a position where we had exposure over large events that were being canceled left and right. So 2020 was a challenging year. However, the company did respond well, and we are positioned well going forward. So that's a good amount of what I can tell you just as a broad overview of the company. So again, as I started to say, and then I cut myself off, I started with Munich Re in January of 2020 in Princeton. I was there for about 2.5 months. Things were going well. And we got the word that there's this pandemic that we think is brewing here. Let's start thinking about it. And we actually started looking at it in February because that's when it started getting some traction and people started hearing about it. And we started publishing some information, giving employees a heads up, trying to be proactive to say, hey, we're not sure what this is and how big it's going to be, but we do know that it looks serious. So here are some things that we think you should be doing, and trying to provide employees with just give them a heads up and just give them, starting to think about it before anything came down formally from the government or from the states or anybody. As Mike said, they have their 3 pillars of what they focus on. We have very similar types of pillars. Employee safety is paramount throughout this whole process, as well as making sure that we were servicing our clients and there was no drop off in what our clients needed. And as you can imagine, that could present a conundrum of balancing employee safety with, making sure our clients' needs were met as well. Because obviously everybody's going through the same thing. Everybody's trying to balance, okay, what do I do with my workforce? How do I keep them safe? How do I keep them feeling positive about what they're doing while also making sure that our clients' needs are being met? So everybody was in that same shift and that same, thought process. And what we did was, because the majority of the workforce was in an office environment, it presented some challenges for us to, within about a week, realize that we needed to shift employees working remotely. So kudos to our IT group and our facilities management group, because they were able to put in protocols in place, get our IT infrastructure up so everybody could log in every day from a remote location. And we didn't have, months of this with, testing and everything available to broaden the bandwidth and make sure it worked. It had to be done literally within days, which they were able to accomplish. Similar to Mike, we transferred probably mid last summer to late summer from Skype to Microsoft Teams. I'd say with mixed results. I think there were some things that Skype did pretty well, but I do like Teams and I'm used to it now. So we were able to continue our virtual, hiring, discussions, interviewing, our open enrollment process. We had, several online discussions. So the business of the day was just changed from in person to online, like everybody else, remote. Having migrated to the remote, our company decided last summer, when the numbers had started going down through surveys, the company sent out multiple surveys to the employees trying to gauge their level of interest and their level of concern over maybe coming back to the office. And there was enough people that volunteered and said, yeah, I'll come back to the office last summer, where we were about to roll out to go in our first, what we call our first wave of voluntary return to the office, when the numbers started spiking. And about a week before we were scheduled to go back in, and again, it would have been a small population, again, with a lot of the same things that Mike had already articulated, with the distancing and the protocols and the wiping down and the limitations in the cafeteria. All those things had been taken into account, and we had to put it on hold because just of the way the environment had changed again. So fast forward to this year, again, additional surveys were sent out. Employees responded. We had very good response rates with the surveys, and management was very keen to take those to heart, to make sure that when they were making any decisions, employee welfare was at the top of the list. Because, quite frankly, the company saw that within the year plus that people have been working remotely, productivity had not decreased, client satisfaction had not decreased. Employees, in some regards, were happier. I saw I think Don had put it up in the beginning. He saw he had heard at a networking event, I never want to commute into the office again. So I think, people got used to being able to, perform their jobs remotely and enjoy doing so. However, we do recognize that we do have folks that are taking care of younger children, and the daycare may not be there. We know the schools have been in and out. So we realize that there's additional pressures on employees that would have those types of family makeups. So we have tasked our, EAP to be more readily available. We've promoted the EAP. We've tried to get the stigma off of EAP to help people understand this is not just a number you call when you're on a ledge and ready to jump off. There's a lot of value that the EAP can bring. And we've worked very hard with our EAP partner, which is through Cigna, to promote. And we have seen an uptick in utilization because of that. Not as much as we think we would like to see, but we have seen enough to feel that it's making an impact, and we'll continue to promote that. So as we sit today, we are starting our first wave of voluntary return to the office next week. It was just it's been in the works for a couple of weeks in terms of the yes or no, but the final approval was given by the board yesterday. So the return to office for the folks that are doing it on a voluntary basis starts Tuesday of next week. And the idea is, if you are returning to the office voluntarily, we're asking that you come in at least one day a week, but no more than 3. So we're trying to limit the amount of folks on campus and the days that they're on campus. So we're keeping it to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If for some reason you have to be in the office on a Monday or Friday, that's fine. You can do so. You just need to go through, we have a protocol to go through that. So facilities is aware, security is aware, all the right folks are aware of who's going to be in the building. I have been in the building on and off probably about once a month since this has started. We just go in to check on some things. There's still physical mail that comes in, and that has to be dealt with. So we still do a few things in the office. And one of the things that the facilities group has set up is you have a card. Every workstation has a card on it. And I'm a big guy. I like to eat, so I'll give you an analogy of food. If you ever gone to one of those Brazilian steakhouses and you get the card and you turn it over green, they start bringing over all kinds of food to your table. And then when you turn it red, they stop. Well, this is similar. There's a card, and on the one side it says, "Come off, workspace has been cleaned." Once you're there and you perform your duties before you leave, you flip the card over. This way, the facilities folks know who's been in the office and what workstations need to be cleaned, and they make sure they come around and they clean those offices and those spaces. Same thing if you go into a conference room, if you use the copier machine, anything like that is done. There's a protocol to come into the office. When I go into the office, I have to have my manager's approval, and then she sends an email to security saying, Mike Harris is coming into the office on this date for this reason. Please let him in. When you show up, instead of going through the number of different doors where you can put your key, your card in and gain access to the facility, you go into one place now and you have to hit the buzzer and security talks to you. And they ask you a series of questions. If you answer yes to any of the questions, then they'll ask you to leave, because then that means you have some signs or symptoms that you're not 100% well. Once you come in, you go to the security station. They take your name. You write down on a piece of paper who you are. There's a couple of check boxes on some questions, and you complete that, sign it, and you fill it in. Then you go to your workspace. In the time that I've been there, I've seen no more than 2 or 3 people in the office at the same time. Cafeteria has been completely closed. They have like a little snack area where they have prepackaged foods available if you're in the office and no charge. Usually you pay for it, but during this period, there's no charge. And overall, the plan is, and our CEO, our American CEO has said, we're not Microsoft. We're not going to be able to have 100%, employees working remotely. But we've recognized that because of what we've experienced over the last year, what we've heard in our surveys from employees about enjoying the working remotely, there's going to be a hybrid solution when we eventually get to the final, what I'll call the new normal. We don't have exactly that definition defined yet. I think it's going to be something that evolves over the next few months. There's going to be a lot of focus on how this first wave of returning to the office has gone. There'll be a lot of discussions about what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do, how are we still servicing our clients, how are we doing our day-to-day jobs, and from a longer-term perspective, what would this mean is if we shift our workforce and the working environment that they use. So a lot more to come. Don't have all the answers yet, but I can tell you that in the year plus that I've been here, I feel very confident that Munich Re is putting the employees' needs, I won't say ahead of clients' needs, but they're right there with them. And everything they've done and everything they've communicated has been positive, and letting the employees know that, hey, we're not going to force you back here. But at some point, there will be some new normal, and we're hoping to get to that by, I'd say, September. Provided the environment allows us to. Again, right? We're not able to drive this unless the environment has continues to trend in the right direction. So overall, I'll just conclude by saying I think we're phasing it in the right way. Employees have been positive about the return. I can say that based on the survey results and the number of people that are coming back to the office starting on Tuesday of next week, it's about the number they expected. So it's in line with what they were looking for. And we'll see how that goes. And then if it goes well, I think there'll be a second phase of voluntary, and then it'll trend to something probably a little more closer to new normal.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Harris and Mr. McCarthy. Really good job. So this was in our agenda. This was when we were going to do our breakout rooms. And in the spirit of networking, I'd like to, try and still do that. We're right on time. These guys did a really good job.
Hey, Jerry.
John and I chased off 2 people, so we're too short.
All right.
I don't know, we lost one too.
They said they had another meeting, but I'm not sure if I'm buying that.
I know Morris had to jump off.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
And so I'm going to kind of take us home. Very interesting conversations, and I just want to personally thank the Mike and Mike show for for being a part of this. As I was listening to both stories, I'll kind of kick this thing off. It's very interesting how you have 2 different scenarios, but I think, a lot of it depends on the industry. If you have a manufacturing industry and they have to, be there on site, that creates a bunch of different challenges than, Mike Harris's organization, it's a professional services firm that can get away more with, having people work from home, and they all create, different challenges on how you're going to overcome that. And it's funny because I don't know if there's an exact blueprint. Every company kind of is going to find their own, sweet spot as to how to, navigate back to this normal. But, I wanted to kind of ask Mike and Mike and also give folks the opportunity to ask some questions. But, being a consulting firm in the benefits space, I've seen some different I look at COVID and I think what COVID has done in some respects is not created certain issues, but has shined the light on different issues. And I think one of the things that COVID has kind of shined the light on that always existed was this flexibility of work time, right? And what we're seeing and what the surveys tell us is that a lot of employers are thinking about how they, I'll call it rebalance their time off policies, because, now there's more of a shift for caregivers, parental care, the kids are home at school and so forth. And when you look at the whole idea of recruiting and retention, how do you create a package from a benefits perspective that's going to accommodate more of that? And I'd like to kind of throw that out to Mike and Mike and just kind of get your sense, now that you've kind of navigated the waters, how do you move forward and create that ability to attract and retain and keep the flexibility? And I wonder if you put thought into the rebalance and looking at time off policies, because we've seen where the pandemic, where people had to dip into that. And I'll just leave it from there. And maybe Mike McCarthy, you can give a sense of what you guys experience, what you're looking to do.
Sure, I'll try to answer your question and steer me if I go a little awry. When COVID started, even before Families First, the legislation went through to protect employees' positions, pay, and things like that, we as a company pivoted, overly used word these days, very quickly to extending our internal family leave and things like that. So we took the stance safety first. If you have a symptom or you have COVID or any family member, just stay home. If you're in an office role, you might be able to work. I mean, if you're the sick one, not a problem. If you can't work, it's all covered. And then certainly if you're in the plant or a distribution center, we're like, we want you to go get tested. It's fine if you're positive, we have you covered and we'll pay you. We had a couple instances in the very beginning. We had 2 people out for about a month. What happened was COVID got into a household, a grandparent died in that household, eventually got to the employee, and we kept them out just a very long time and we paid them. And then the Families First came along. We started taking advantage of that to get the tax subsidy every quarter. Moving forward, I would like to think over pre-COVID, we opened up our time off. So right now, maternity leave is 12 weeks in our organization. People are, home with babies and things like that. If people can work from home, there's no rush to get them back, daycares and things like that. So we do have some policies that are in writing, but there are a lot of things that we just work with the situation. Yes, that's probably, but yeah, there are some roles, to your point, that you got to have in. And I think moving forward, I'll leave it on this. We have not mandated vaccination anywhere in the company, anywhere worldwide. We will not in the US right now. We're strongly encouraging it. I'm working with Rite Aid. We just sent 31 people through this past Tuesday to get vaccinated. A lot of people already are. I have another group coming from headquarters next Tuesday. We would like to be a contributor towards herd immunity. That will help. And I am keeping track of who's vaccinated, whether they do it through us or somewhere else, and it's voluntary. We just say, would you please tell us? And we have a good culture and people are telling us that. The numbers are going up every week. So I think moving forward, we will have some groups that will be hybrid, customer service, order processing, and whatnot. But just as I left our last breakout room session, we're built on relationships, and a lot of the relationships in the company right now are pre-established, but we also have a lot of new employees. I have a payroll specialist. He hasn't met most of the organization, and that's not going to be a good thing long term. So when we start doing social activities again, more and more, right, I think that's going to draw people in.
Great. Thanks.
So, yeah.
Mike Harris, what do you guys have seen in terms of, accommodating your folks just from a time off perspective?
So one of the things that we had started prior to the, I'll say leave the office working environment was we had taken a look at our leave policies, our paid leave policy. And, with the help of our consultant, who is Tryon, they did some great benchmarking for us, and it allowed us the opportunity to say, hey, we're a little bit below where we need to be here. So in the middle of the year, I'd say around, I think it was mid-July or August, we implemented a new leave policy, gave people more paid time off when they needed it. But that had started prior to COVID, so that was not a reaction to COVID. We were just looking at normal, opportunities where we felt we could do things. I'm sure this happened to a lot of organizations. As we were tracking vacation through the year of 2020, we were realizing nobody was taking time off, right? Because time off meant instead of going to your computer that day, you'd maybe go to the couch, or you go to another room. So people weren't planning. They weren't going to the beach. They weren't going to Disney World. They weren't going to Europe. They weren't, so people weren't taking their time off. And there was a big push over the summer to say, hey, we know that, you can't do the things you really want to do, but you really do need to get away from your desk. You need to decompress. Take a couple of days off. Take long weekends, but take your time. We really want to see people take their time and get away from their desks and decompress. Because one of the things we realized was, and I think everybody's done this, your workday is probably longer when you're working remotely as opposed to in the office, right? So instead of getting in your car at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're probably logging in at 7 o'clock in the morning. Instead of leaving the office between 5:30 and 6 and then driving home, you're probably staying on, at least that long, if not longer. And I've talked to a lot of my friends outside of Munich Re, and they all say the same thing. We log in earlier, we stay on later. We're doing more. We're not, it's not like we're going out to lunch. As Anthony said, there's no more business lunches. There's no more, visiting. So we realize people are more chained to their desks. And what we're trying to do is periodically remind people, say, hey, we know you're working hard. We know you're working harder. We appreciate that. But really take some time off. Take a few days, even if you just go for a walk or a bike ride or, do something. Start using your time. So that's been a big push. And as far as giving people flexibility, that has always been something that I've recognized here at Munich Re. My boss will say, hey, if you got an appointment at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, go do it. Or if it makes sense for you to do something at 10 o'clock in the morning, go do it. But we know that by the end of the day, what needs to be done that day is going to get done. So the flexibility is there. So you don't stress over, oh my God, I got to go do this with my child at 11 o'clock in the morning. I can't do it because it's the middle of my workday. No, go ahead and do it. We understand that. We realize it. So, just get your work done at the end of the day. And I think the fact that companies are now treating everyone more like a professional, I'm not saying they didn't before, but there's not as much looking over their shoulder. Employees don't feel like they're being looked over the shoulder as much as maybe they used to if they work remotely, because the productivity is there and the work's getting done. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what you want to see.
Let
I
me
just want to
ask,
add, go ahead.
I'm sorry, let me ask one more question, and then I just want to kind of open it up to any of the participants to ask you. One of the things that I've read and I've seen and surveys that come out is that the employees, they actually prefer when it comes to information about the vaccine, get it from their employer. Maybe you can share with the group what each of your companies are doing in terms of educating your population, because they'd rather hear it from you than from the news or reading the newspaper. And I'm curious what role, Mike and Mike, your company has provided to be that facilitator of education. Mike Harris, since you're on my screen right here.
Sure. So a couple of things with that. As Mike McCarthy had said earlier, we're the same. We are not mandating that people get a vaccine. We are encouraging people to get the vaccine. We've sent out several communications regarding that. We've provided links to CDC, World Health Organizations, those types of organizations where credibility could be questioned, but for the most part, that's who we're looking at. When you say the science, well, who's running the science? That's what we're trying to do, give people that information. The other thing that we just did probably within the last 2 weeks is we sent out an employee communication telling people that if you need to go get a vaccine, go get it. You're not going to get charged for time off. We're giving you up to 4 hours to go get your vaccine. If you're an exempt employee, you just go and do it. If you're a non-exempt employee who has to track their time, you just put it in as excused time off with your manager. Just let them know. But there's no questions asked. I'm going to get my vaccine. Good, go ahead. So we're encouraging people by informing them and also giving them that flexibility so they can go whenever their appointment comes up.
Thanks, Mike. Mike McCarthy, you probably answered this a little bit, but just curious from how you're, filling that role as communicator to your population.
Yeah, so I would only want to compliment or add on to what Mike said. So we are doing similar things in the communications, provide objective information from Johns Hopkins, CDC, what have you. The other thing culturally that we're trying to do is we talk a lot about the we, the we IFM family. So one of the reasons we're getting vaccinated is for each other. So it obviously resonates with individuals. It's the we factor, but it's also balanced with the respect for the individual. I would say there's 3 categories someone probably would not get vaccinated in our organization. 1, there may be pregnancy or fertility concerns, or doctors ask them not to. Religious, or they don't believe in it. They're not really a vaccine person, or they want to see how's this really going to play out, with the news and some of the things, maybe we heard from J&J this week. So we tell them, we respect that. So it's a balancing. So we try to put a cultural element to it. It's the only other thing. And lastly, on the culture, I meant to mention on the leaves last year, and this might be a suggestion for those of you that have largely remote workforces and will continue. We mandated in the second quarter and the third quarter last year that everyone take a week of vacation. And to a lot of the reasons Mike just spoke to, we were worried about burnout, mental health, and walk in your yard, go out, but just get a break from work shut down, because people were working way too many hours, and we were also we wanted to get ready for a third and fourth quarter that was just going to go, and it did. So anyway,
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
So at this point, I kind of want to open it up to the folks on the call and see if you guys have questions for Mike and Mike. And this has been great. It's been an awesome journey to kind of see both ends of the spectrum, but I want to open it up to those folks on the call.
I don't have a question, but on behalf of our PSPS South Jersey Land, I want to thank you both. This has been a really, really interesting presentation and program. I got a lot of great information about it, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Don?
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm curious about the potential in the future as things start to get to whatever the heck the new normal is. What do you think you may, or are you going to be thinking about downsizing floor space or office space as people are not necessarily forced to be so far apart? Is that anywhere in your thinking?
Mike, do you want to start, or do you want me to go?
Sure, I'll start. That's a great question. I know that I've thought about it. Just in general, it just seems to make sense, right? If you're not going to have as many people in the office, then you don't need as much office space. There's been no formal discussions regarding that. Munich Re had initiated ironically, kind of a work space design initiative, probably in 2019, and it had continued into 2020 right before this all hit. So they were looking at how to redesign office space on a go-forward basis. I would imagine that once we get and the new normal is defined, then I would imagine there would be, as one of the many items that'll be looked at and reviewed, would be the actual office space. But yes, absolutely.
We're building a new warehouse right now in Downingtown because we've outgrown our older one, so we have a capacity issue there. So that's only going to get larger, and the manufacturing plant is going to outgrow itself within the next 5 years. We're going to go the other way in those two locations. Here at the headquarters, we built this building, very common to IFM. They will ask us to go out and literally build our own buildings to spec. It's more for talent retention, and hopefully it has an attraction to new talent, vendors, customers, what have you. So it was really built for how we operate. And we haven't talked at all about doing anything differently. And then actually we build the building and then we do a 10-year lease on it so that if we outgrow it, we can leave and go. So we're 5 years out from that. So, but we're not seeing any changes.
Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the group?
Anthony, let me jump in. Mike and Mike, thank you very much. I appreciate the comments. And with Prime Point, we're doing very much the same thing. We did a survey. We're encouraging people to get vaccinated. One comment I would add, I was down in Atlantic City at the mega site yesterday, guys. If you're in Jersey, FEMA said they've got open appointments and asked me to spread the word to people to get down there and get it done. Here at that mega site, they're doing a great job between FEMA and the Guard and Atlantic Care of running people through in a very, very quick manner. So, folks that need the shot, get down to Atlantic City and then spend some money at the casinos too. They need that too. Thanks, Anthony.
You know what? Well, if there's not another question, this always hits my mind. Sometimes there's this, not disconnect, but there's one of the struggles that COVID has kind of put on companies is the ability, CFOs want liquidity. They want to be able to have some kind of predictability. And COVID has kind of, made that a little wonky in terms of how do you budget? How do you, have more predictability? And I'm just curious from Mike and Mike, now that there's, at least it feels like we're coming out on the positive side, how has the budgets, from the previous years kind of impacted the kind of things that you can do this year in terms of budgets and things that you can do that you want to spend dollars for the employees to accommodate some of the things that they, that you need from a cultural perspective, as well as from a recruiting and retention perspective. So I'm just curious, are you feeling, or maybe you can kind of share some of the pressures maybe on the finance side and how that trickles down to HR, if there are any?
Mike, do you want to go or?
No, go ahead. I'll let you take this one first.
Okay. So since we talk about the last year, 2018, 2019 expectations, we grow by double-digit sales every year. That's a flat-out expectation. Last year, we were killing it until March hit. And then we did a reforecast very quickly, and we were very conservative. We went from double-digit sales to the company prepared financially from a CFO standpoint at 0 or negative. We did a lot of forecasts, even negative 10% sales. We came out at a positive like 6%. So we were off from what we wanted in 2020, but we did better than survival, certainly, which was good. We cut back dramatically about $250,000 off the HR budget. So that goes into talent acquisition, employee development. We slacked that off. All travel was cut, trade shows. So cost, when you look at the bottom line, we also did better, actually, even from a profit standpoint. So we looked at top line and bottom line, of course. This year with the forecasts, everything has gone way, way back up, but we're a very prudent company. So safe growth is one of our 3 legs. And the number that we're expecting to come in is really, really good. So we're being viewed, why is that? Not only do we have our traditional businesses, but like Canada, they got involved with a major ventilator company, so they had a great end of 2020, what have you, but we're doing more in robotics and things. And actually in our world, we're all about automation. So a lot of manufacturers and things, they want to automate even more. So we've had to invest a lot more money to be able to do a lot more things. And then costs are naturally coming down because we still don't have the travel and things like that. So that in that regard, this is a much different looking year than 2020.
Thanks, Mike. It's funny because our company saw the same thing. Like we used to go fly all over the country and do trade shows and, meet clients, and our T&E went to 0. And that actually helped us for 2020 because there was, there wasn't that bottom line expense. Mike Harris, how about if you can weigh in on that?
So, I can speak to the benefits department's budget. And our budgeting season is typically mid to late summer, for the following year. So when we did our budgeting last year, we looked at specific programs that we wanted to implement. Some were cost neutral. We looked at what we needed to do in anticipation of potential new normal. But from our standpoint, we were looking at the benefits offerings and where we felt we needed to be a little bit stronger. So we allocated additional resources to those areas, primarily EAP, leave, the health insurance. My boss and I keep saying, 2020 is going to have an asterisk next to it because, our overall healthcare costs were down, but we're expecting that could be different this year. So, and we've had continuing conversations with finance on that to try to let them know, just because we were down last year, don't expect that. There could be an additional rise because of, people putting off, certain things, maybe not going to see the doctor as much, maybe not having that elective surgery, putting off certain things. So we're anticipating that this year could be a little higher, although so far through February, I don't have my March numbers yet, but through February, we are still down. So, but what we've done was try to look at where we would potentially add more value to the employees because of the COVID piece in those areas of EAP, time off, behavioral health, because people are just going to struggle with everything going on at their house. So that's what we've tried to focus on.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I think we have 3 minutes left, and that's it. Like I'm good. We've thanked you about 32 times, so I'll make it a 33rd. To thank you, and I'll just kind of leave everyone with this note. I've been a member of Beacon now for 8 years, and I got to tell you, the relationships that I've developed from the folks in Beacon has been enormous, and this is about the spirit of networking, and what you cast out, you get back, and you give love, you get love, you give hate, you get hate, and so I can't thank you guys enough for carving out time of your day to give back to the organization. And
Beacon is the premier executive networking organization serving the Mid-Atlantic region. To learn more, go to beaconforlife.org.